Hi, my name is Ellie Brocklehurst, and with me today is my beautiful friend and co-host Beck Nadalo, and together we are full-timers. As two working mums with small children and hubbies in tow, we've come to the realisation that the best way to define us, and a lot of people out there, is that we're full-time. Full-time mums, full-time wives, full-time employees, friends and daughters. And with all that full-time comes with it a lot of weight, obstacles and constraints, but also a lot of great opportunities. We've been searching for somewhere to validate our feelings about what it takes to be a woman in today's world. So rather than continue that search, we thought, let's start it. Welcome to the Full-Timers Club. Hi, welcome back to the Full-Timers Club. I'm Ellie.
And I'm Beck.
And today we are excited to talk about something that's very close to our heart and very timely. It is Mental Health Awareness Month in October, and we have a topic that I really want to thank my good friend Mish for, who has not only shared this topic as one of interest for her, but sent, I think, like 25 other topics, which is incredibly useful.
Mish.
So thank you, Mishy. We want to talk about how, as full-time mums and workers and friends, there's often a tendency to think of ourselves last.
Yeah.
And it's just really important for us to try to figure out really helpful ways for other people to just not do that. And that's in a professional setting and a personal setting. And I want to ask you a question first, Beck, because you've now taken on this role, a little while ago now, but as a leader of an agency, and to go from someone who's part of a leadership team to then going to one where you are kind of solely responsible for the agency. How have you found that that's impacted you personally?
Well, I think before we get into that, I think one of the things we talked about was this whole statement of how do you put yourself first when you're a bit too busy looking after everyone else? And I think this is such a natural tendency of women, but also women who have, are full-timers, jobs, children, husbands, homes, everything to look after. You just naturally put yourself last. And I probably feel it even more in this current role. People have often said it's really lonely at the top, and I don't think I've ever quite appreciated what that means until I took on this role, and I'm like, oh, okay, whole another level. It really is a role where you put yourself last, but then it's amplified by the fact that as a mother you often put yourself last. As a wife, often you put yourself last. Many times as a friend, you're always trying to cater to everyone else and make sure everyone else is okay. And I think this is one of the greatest joys of this job. And I often say it's a privilege that and something I enjoy so much, which is helping people grow, looking after people. I love the people aspect of this, and it's the same as motherhood. I love putting my family first. So it's one of the greatest joys, but it's also one of the hardest things as well, because you are then naturally putting yourself last all the time. And so it does make this job very lonely. And I think, there's one analogy that I often use to tell people about I think the role of often a leader, but I feel like I play this role in other parts of my life, which is, when you're on an airplane and there's turbulence and everyone's a bit like, oh shit, should I be worried? And you look at the air hostess, and if the air hostess isn't worried and they're just carrying about their natural day-to-day business or whatever, whatever they're doing, serving food, if they're not worried, you're like, okay, cool. I don't need to panic. But it's if you see a glimmer of panic in their eye, or you see them look at another air hostess then you start to worry.
So true.
And I feel whether it's as a CEO or whether it's as a mother or as a friend, everyone's looking to you to know, at what point do I worry? At what point do I panic? And as a result, you then are constantly thinking okay, how do I hold myself together? Your biggest objective in your day is how do I maintain positive, optimistic tone or persona for everyone else so that everyone else is taken care of, which I think for me is pretty natural, because I think my default setting is very optimistic and positive, and I have a pretty low tolerance for anything other than that, because I just think life's too short. But it does get exhausting and tiring, and I often find by the end of the day I will just fall on the couch and I just want to stare at the TV, and that's my looking after myself part, not thinking.
I do think I'm very similar to you in that I am like the eternal optimist. I'm a very peppy person, and anyone who knows me knows that I'm full of positivity. But someone once said to me, it was a manager who once said that I wear stress on my face. And it's always been something that I'm now really conscious of, that I tend to just, if I get anxious, if I get stressed, it's for everyone to see. And Will, my husband, says the same thing actually. And so much of it impacts everyone else around me.
Yeah.
And so I think that's, I mean, at first when I heard it, I thought, well, screw you. Like, I'm stressed. This is just how I deal with it. But now I'm very conscious that if I don't deal with things well, it does affect others. And so I definitely try now to kind of make sure that I do calm down a bit or not let it kind of overwhelm me.
Yeah.
But I mean, gosh, yes, I think in your setting it would be a different kind of level.
Well, I often get people to say to me, like, I don't know how you stay so positive, how you're always so optimistic. And, you know, we talked about this a few episodes ago when we talked about redundancy and how I didn't feel like I was resilient. And I feel like over the last 15 months of this job, I've built up so much more resilience.
Yeah, you have.
And I think because of the necessity to maintain a kind of calm, optimistic, you know, like very I've got this under control demeanor, it's forced me to compartmentalize things a lot better. And so I know like when I need to worry and when I don't, when I can actually do something about, you know, whatever situation, when it's beyond my control and actually there's no need to worry. But then I also think it's built this kind of thing in me, which is, you know, like what are you supposed to do if things are going bad or things are a bit stressful? What do you do? Sit down, throw your hands in the air and do nothing about it and just moan and kind of mope about? Or do you just go, okay, like this is the reality I've been dealt right now. I need to pick myself back up. Or like I always give myself 24 hours to like mope. And then I'm like, okay, 24 hours is over. I need to pick myself up and I need to carry on. And I think it's come from a necessity because you have kids and you have an agency to run and you've got no other choice. But I've also now trained myself into that of like really reshaping my mindset and how I approach things. And I think what ends up happening is your levels to what you can tolerate when it comes to stress or whatever just gets higher and higher. So actually things that people are like really stressed out about now, I'm like, don't even worry about it. That's so inconsequential in the bigger, broader scheme of things. And so my tolerance has just gotten a lot higher as well.
So what would you say helped you to create that mindset? Because there's obviously it's you as a personality, but has there been other people in your life? Has there been, you know, have you sought out professional help in order to kind of create or shape that? Because I think that'd be really interesting to explain if there's someone or something or many people out there who have helped you to do that.
I've definitely sought out professional help. So, you know, we've been very open with each other about it. So I saw a life coach, I think it was during COVID, and then intermittently have gone back and forth with her. Like when I'm feeling not resilient or I'm just feeling like a bit fragile or like life is really heavy at the moment. Yeah. Not literally right now, but like if I'm feeling like that, I'll go and talk to her and she's amazing. And I think life coaches are very good like this because they're very pragmatic with their advice. Like do this, very tactical. So for example, one of the things that she told me, which I still do today, is like scheduling worry time. So I have a tendency in the past, I don't think I do this anymore actually. I've trained myself out of it, but I used to catastrophize. You know, you like think of one thing and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to get fired and then I'm never going to be able to afford a house and I'm never going to be able to move home and I'm going to be working till I'm 100, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, you know, you've just gone from like something that's relatively small and you're spiraling. Yeah. And I would always wake up at like 3 a.m. doing that. And so she said this thing, which is at 5 p.m. every single day or whatever time works for you, schedule worry time. So you're allowed to worry about whatever you want for 10 minutes and you write it down, you get it all out. But, you know, at 3 a.m. or at 1 p.m. when you start worrying, you go, okay, I'm going to write this down. I'm going to worry about this at 5 p.m. And so at 5 p.m. you're allowed to worry for for 10 minutes, but you're about everything that could come to your mind. And you start to train yourself to compartmentalize and know like at this moment in time, there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm not going to let it bother me.
And like, I guess identify what battles are worth fighting.
Totally. Because then you get to 5 p.m. you're like, I can't even remember what I was worried about.
Or just, I'm just so exhausted. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been one thing that's been really, really helpful in terms of I guess, looking after myself and my mental health.
Mm.
But how about you? Because I know you've had an experience with seeing a psychologist, I think.
Yeah. I've actually seen a few in my adult lifetime. I saw one when I was quite young. I think I was like 22.
Mm-hmm.
And it was right at the time when I was really disillusioned with university. And I was really stuck in just a real funk about what I was doing with my life, which when I now look back and go, like, God, I was 22.
Yeah.
But I just had no direction. I didn't know what I was doing. And I saw one and it was just very eye-opening to, as you just said, how pragmatic they are and how they just go, well, why are you making this such a big issue? If you don't like it, go get a job, go quit. Although my dad to this day would really like to have a word with her about that because I did quit. But I did find a job and it's then set me on this wonderful path. Yeah. But I have actually seen one when I had my first, and then subsequently every couple of months I see one, and it's mostly to help me. I think I have this really bad habit of internalizing my worry and internalizing my stress and anxiety to the detriment of others, really, and myself. But as I said, I think I wear my stress on my face, and it got to a point with, I think I went back to work and I had one kid, and I think, it's really hard to navigate your new relationship with your partner when you have a new relationship in your life, which is your child.
Mm-hmm.
And and this is probably, I think, mostly for females, your entire life, first and foremost, is about the child.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing, I think, for a man to have to deal with. And I just don't know if we dealt with it as well as we possibly could have. And it probably was also because of COVID. And so we didn't have any family support. And, it was just us in this house and dealing with that. And I saw someone to help me learn how to communicate pretty much. And the first learning that she had for me was, you've got to learn how to ask for help.
Yeah.
Like, you are trying to do everything and then you're blaming everyone else when you are overwhelmed because you haven't asked them. When if you've asked him, he probably would have helped. And it's not asking them in a certain way. It's like learning how to ask them without being like,
so true.
Don't be a dick and do that. Like it's you've got to learn their language. Is something that she taught me. And so then obviously as kind of times have gone on, when I was made redundant, or when I had my second baby, like there's always going to be new moments in life that you have to readjust or recalibrate. And it's funny because I didn't actually see her this time, but I took a lot of those learnings. When I went back to work this time, which was obviously a new job, and I'd had my second child, I just wore the responsibility of our whole life on my shoulders.
Yeah.
It was a brand new job. It was trying to navigate life with 2 kids. It was feeling the weight of being made redundant in the first place, just sitting in the back of my mind constantly being like, you've got to perform, you've got to do this. And there was nothing that my work did to make me feel like this. In fact, they were incredibly supportive and very open to kind of helping me through this. But I just fell apart 4 weeks in. It was the most anxiety-induced time of my whole life. And it's because I didn't ask for any help.
Yeah.
And I didn't vocalize it early enough. I just sat in it, and I wasn't sleeping. And it just completely consumed me. And it was actually my dad and my mum who were like, you're not really eating. I can tell you're not coping. You need to.
I remember this. Yeah.
It was hard. And I think there's always going to be moments in life when it is going to be hard and there's going to be a new shift. And I just think the big learning, I think I said this in one of our episodes, which is, before I went back to work, I didn't factor myself into any equation. I just thought about what my kids needed, what my husband needed, what my wonderful helper needed, what my work needed, and I didn't think of myself.
Yeah.
So now, as a result of that kind of massive anxiety attack, I'm now like, right, exercise is the thing that helps my mind stay really calm and clear. And so, I went back and I started exercising more, and, I have started trying to put myself first. But it is not an easy transition, I think, for women to put themselves as part of that equation.
But I think, we talked about it earlier, that this whole idea of like, well, then how do women put themselves first? And I think you rightly said, I don't think that's never going to happen. That's not in our tendency to put ourselves first, but it's about making space for yourself and knowing like I think your point around knowing when to ask for help and how the most important thing is how to ask for help, because we are traditionally so bad at this. It's like, you know, I felt it this morning actually. I got out of bed and my husband is the best sleeper in the world and he doesn't wake up.
Men?
Yeah, I guess. And thankfully my son is also like his father. But, you know, I get up, I'll have a shower, get everything ready and then go and wake up Roman. And then I'll get breakfast going and stuff. And Andrew kind of like, you know, gets up casually and he's amazing. I can't fault him on many things. But this morning I felt that thing where I was like, I'm trying to get ready really quickly. I'm trying to make breakfast. And I was getting frustrated in my head. And then I was like stomping around the house. And I literally thought to myself, this is so unhelpful because he's probably like, why is she stomping? In my head, I'm like, can't you understand why I'm stomping? Because you didn't get up early. Blah, 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 blah. We expect people to read our minds, whereas actually all I really needed to do was say, hey, in the morning I really need some help. And the way you can help me is by waking up 10 minutes earlier to do X, Y, Z. Yeah. And we're so bad at that.
We're so bad at it. And rather than say something that would have been along the lines of, can't you see I need help?
Yeah.
Which is so antagonistic.
Like, help
right?
how? What do you mean? What? I made the bed.
I find myself doing it way too often. And I really want to celebrate Will in this moment, because when that did happen to me in my first month, he massively stepped up.
Yeah.
And I can't thank him enough for that, because I think having a partner that not only hears you out but actually acts goes a long way into creating, you know, what I think is a wonderful relationship. But it is, and I think my dad used to always say to me that the way I ask for help, and this is apparently since I was kind of little, is very assumptive. It's very much like, how come you haven't done this? Or why don't you think you do that? And he's like, half the time we don't even know where you're coming from. Like there's no context. Exactly. You just kind of think about it. And I'm a massive, I like talk to myself in my
you've
head.
had a conversation in your head that no one else has been privy to, but you're expecting that they know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. I think that's
not just you though.
No. I think that it's the same at work. I think there's a tendency for, I've always tried to be, I don't think I've had enough experience managing big teams to know how to delegate very well, because I have a tendency to, exactly the same as the household, just go, you know what, much quicker if I do it myself. I know I can do it. I know I can do it in the time that I need to do it. And therefore I've just never been very good at passing that over.
Yep.
And I think it's the same thing. It's knowing not only how to ask for help of others in your workplace, but how to give it.
So this is something that I have struggled with massively. And I remember a boss, I think it was Nimesh actually, called me a one-woman agency because he was like, you can do everything. Like we have full faith you could do all of our jobs in one person. And you most of the time you do. But in doing that, I burn myself out. And number two, and I think this is something that I would recommend to everyone to read this book called Multipliers. And there's a wonderful woman at Iris called Verena who introduced this, and this is a huge part of like Iris culture, is multipliers versus diminishers. Are you being a multiplier or are you diminishing people? And what I mean by that is me doing everything myself, which is such a tendency of high-performing women. You think it's faster for you to do it, but actually what you've told the person whose job you're doing is you don't trust them. You don't think they're capable. So by doing it, you think you're protecting them, or that you're, you know, taking a little bit off their plate. But they've probably interpreted that as, Ellie thinks I'm crap at my job and so she's going to do it herself. And so you know what? Next time I'm just not going to bother because she's going to do it anyway. And this is like classic diminisher behavior. And I am so guilty of this, and I really struggle with it. And I often during the day will think to myself, you're being a diminisher, or, you know, like a classic multiplier behavior would be, you ask me, hey, should I do this for this client? And rather than saying, here's what I would do, a multiplier would say, that's interesting. Tell me what your perspective would be and why you've thought of that. So you're like teaching them and
leading
coaching them.
Almost kind of.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the whole coaching technique. And that's what a multiplier would do, and a diminisher would just give them the answer, which then they're never going to learn. But I think this comes back to high-performing women who just take everything on because you're always thinking about, how do I lighten the load of others, or like, you know what, I'll just do it because it'll be faster and I don't want to bother that person.
Yeah.
But actually the flip side of that is you're burning yourself out, and you're also making others feel diminished.
Yeah. Or not giving them the techniques they need to grow. Like I remember seeing on Instagram or some social media site that a woman was talking about how as mothers we need to make space for men to learn when we have very small children and like babies. You know how we always like the dads will come into their own when they're teenagers or when they're small children or when they're certain ages. Like, you know, we're always like men will do that. She was saying if you don't give them the space to learn, then they won't learn how to parent properly because you've got to be part of that journey right from the start. And I remember when I had my first, I remember thinking like, yep, Will's job can just be nappies. And he was great at it, but
he's like the master of nappies.
He's the master. Yeah. He gags, but which is actually, it's quite funny. And you know, he's been amazing as part of Johnny's life, but it is interesting how with the second one, it's like he's wanted to be more involved because he knows what it takes to be a parent and therefore he wants to be part of every step. So I do think I've let go a little bit of maybe being like the monster mum and kind of being like, I can do it all. And he's taken that in his stride. But it is funny how so much of the things that are in our professional life apply to our personal life and vice versa.
Sure. I mean, the phrase let go, like the ability or the ability to let go a little bit and go, you know what? Okay, he might put the nappy on wrong or he might get the milk slightly wrong or whatever. Or at work, they might not get that deck or email or whatever perfectly right, but they're going to learn from it and you give feedback. And that's the key thing is like giving feedback and enabling them to do it again next time. Yeah. And by doing that, you're lightening the load on yourself to give yourself more time to do, you know, whatever else it might be or not burn yourself out. But I also recognize this is so much easier said than done because I know I do this every single day and I try so hard and I know exactly what women will be thinking in hearing this. They'll go, yeah, but I do that and then
it doesn't work.
Or the person disappoints me or my husband doesn't get this right and then I have to do it anyway. And it's like, okay, I get that. But that's where you have to give feedback and tell them, you know what, actually, can you do it this way or whatever it might be. And it's a pain in the ass in the short term, but I think in the long term it helps. But it's hard and it's an intentional thing you have to do every single day or make that decision to do every single day. One thing I wanted to ask you is, so when you are, okay, so you yourself or you've put everyone else first and you are going through a tough time, how do you dig yourself out of, whether it's we've even had text messages where we're like, I'm just in a shitty mood today. I'm in a bad mindset. Like, what do you do? What are your techniques or how do you pull yourself out?
So there's probably two ways, and one of them is actually referencing the text that we talk about, just that you just talked about then, which is I draw a lot of light from others. Like I need to surround myself with people who lift me up. And so sometimes if I'm in a funk, I just need to be around others that help me pull me out of it. I'm definitely of the mind that exercise is what makes me most mentally sane. Like just a good amount of sweat, you know, pushing myself to lift a heavy weight, although not lift too heavy because of my pelvic floor, but you know, just like do something that gets me out of whatever funk I'm in because I'm not thinking about it. I've got to think about something else. Like I really genuinely believe that's what fills me up. Yeah. And like tosses all the bad things out. But then that's, you know, that I think I went back to another episode where I said I didn't schedule that in for myself. So now I'm very proactively thinking about how do I make sure that I actually have time to exercise? Yeah. Because it's not that easy to find, you know, especially classes. They're like an hour long. And like, I don't have
drive
time
somewhere.
To do an hour. So I've just, this is crazy, but I've just joined Virgin so I can run on the treadmill for half an hour because they have these classes like a Peloton kind of class.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's a 30-minute class.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Great.
It's 6 minutes down the road from me. I'll be back home 40 minutes later.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's really good. But I know we've texted each other a lot where, you know, you've texted me and said I'm just in a funk or whatever and vice versa. And we really rely on each other to be like, okay, I need to give you a dose of, well, either a pep talk or a dose of optimism or reality or whatever it might be. And I have a friend called Olivia who's really good at this when often, you know, whether it's like sending her a text or having lunch with her or something, and I'll say like, this is how I'm feeling. And she always says to me, what do you need from me right now? Like, how can I best support you? Do you just need me to listen? Do you need me to give you a pep talk? Do you need me to give you a hug? Like, what do you need from me? And sometimes you just need someone to listen to you rant.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, I feel better just by getting it out.
It's so funny you say that because I'm just thinking whenever you say that to me, when I can tell you're in a funk, my first reaction is, do you want me to come see you? And it must be because I draw my help from others.
Yeah.
Like so my instinct is you must need me.
But don't you think, you know what the other interesting thing is? And I'm, again, so guilty of this. My natural tendency is to like, how do I help you solve this? I go into like solution mode.
Yeah.
But actually sometimes all we need is someone to listen. And it's funny how like my first thing is like, how can what do you need me to do? Can I take this off your plate? Can I do this? Can I do it? Because I just go into like, okay, let's solve this problem. And you know what? Sometimes problems, they will solve themselves with time and you just need someone to listen.
But this is what makes you such a good leader.
Maybe. I don't know.
It does.
I don't know.
Being solutions oriented, I always find I gravitate towards those people.
Yeah.
Like you. Because there's nothing I hate more than
Problems
people,
without solutions. Same.
Just grinds my gears.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, my whole thing internally is like, and I really love it because I can see people adopting this is, don't come to me with problems without a solution, or come to me with a problem, but the openness to say, now let's brainstorm a solution together.
Yeah.
And I think to the thing earlier around how do you pull yourself out of these mindsets, I have really low tolerance these days. And I think because I'm time crunched for people with the mentality where they just focus on problems or they just complain or, you know, whatever it might be. But I'm like constantly in solution mode.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. How do we move forward? How do we make this better? Okay, things are a bit shit now, but let's make it better. How? Like, what do we need to do? Come at me with ideas.
And you do that for yourself.
Yeah.
I think what you said the other day, you were in a funk. And I think I saw you, 2 days later, maybe? And I kind of went to it expecting like, all right, she's going to need me. I'm here. We're ready to talk. I've dedicated a full hour of our lunch break to do this. And you were like this, you're like, I'm totally fine.
Yeah, 24 hours.
I've like turned around. I know what I need to do. I'm really focused. I've got a plan.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, fuck, like that's, good.
Yeah, but
good for you.
I also recognize like there have been times in my life where I haven't been like that. And there are other people who, you know, that this is probably also because a lot of the things that I'm facing are surface level. Like I can control them. I can get rid of them. I'm not facing deeper, you know, the loss of something or whatever it might be that's much deeper and will take a lot more time. So I recognize that that's one way to solve things or to deal with things, but it's not the right way for everyone because I don't want anyone to feel like I'm that brutal person that's like, okay, move on.
So I think this is a good place to end. I think, you know, it is Mental Health Awareness Month. I'm always reminded, and I'm glad that it's a month, by the way, not a day.
Yes,
like, International Women's Day is turned into a month as well. Like it's important that we kind of think about all of these things in a longer period of time than a day. But I think we've got some good key takeaways that we'd love for you guys, you know, hopefully to learn from, which is, and I think my biggest one really is how to ask for help.
Yeah.
And that's learning how to ask for help, but also how, like, to articulate how to ask for help.
Yeah. And knowing what it is you need, whether it's on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, to put yourself or make yourself part of the equation, not necessarily putting yourself first.
Yeah.
Is it just some alone time at nighttime where you don't talk to anyone and you binge watch something, or you just sit in silence? Quite often I just need to sit in silence because I'm constantly talking. But know, what does that look like for you? Yeah. And for everyone listening, go and read Multipliers. It is such an easy read and it's so useful, and you will use all of the points that she makes in the book, you'll use on a daily basis.
We will include that in our social links so that people know exactly what you're talking about.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, that has been the Full Timers Club. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ellie.
And I'm Beck.
And we will see you next time.